We're about to set up NTP authentication, and before we do so, I wanted to point out one thing in the show NTP association and status commands, the output we're getting on router 3 right now, and just wanted to bring a little something to your attention because it's easy to get a little confused about why under show NTP status you're seeing something about stratum 9, and under show NTP association you're seeing a little something about sta8, which of course is stratum 8. Remember, with show NTP status, you're looking at the local device's information. With show NTP association, when you start seeing stratum, pole, reach, etc., you're looking at information for that router you have an association with. So we know that 10114 does have a stratum of 8, that's the default, and that's why we're seeing 8 here, while under show NTP status we're seeing clock is synced stratum 9, because that is the local device's information. Now we're going to set up a little NTP authentication. We're going to start over on the switch. We're going to have 3 commands on the switch, and then we'll need 4 for any client we add on. First thing we want to do is NTP authenticate, which just enables NTP authentication. Then you've got to define a key for it, and then you actually have to put MD5 and then whatever you want the password to be. Now I'm going to indicate that that is a trusted key, and on your server that's it. You need NTP authenticate, then you need to make an authentication key, and then you need to indicate that this is indeed a trusted key, and the numbers that we use in NTP authentication key and trusted key must match up. Let's go over to our client, and with the setup we have right now, with our time server configured for authentication and our time client, if you will, router 3 not set up for authentication, what do you think is going to happen when we run show NTP status and show NTP association? It's still synchronized, and we still have our asterisk next to it in show NTP association. So this might surprise you. And it definitely surprised me the first time I saw it, so I hope it surprises you as well, because almost every time with any kind of authentication, whether we go back to point-to-point studies, you're doing you can't do HDLC with authentication, but you can do PPP. Set up PPP authentication, and as soon as you set it up on one side, what happens to the other side? It goes down. This is a very unusual situation with NTP, and let me scroll down a bit and show you. We're going to do all of that I'm scrolling past here in a moment. But the key with authentication with NTP, it really just assures the client that it is indeed talking to an NTP server that is under our administrative control. Just because you enable NTP authentication on the server, it does not require clients to use authentication, just as we're seeing right now, because I can run that command again and I get the same thing. I can run show NTP status. I'm still synchronized to that server, and we know that takes 5 to 10 minutes to cook, so to speak. So I just want you to know it's a really easy thing to overlook. Now, when I do configure authentication here on the client, the entire association is going to have to reset. So we are going to lose that, and I'll pause the video at that time, but I did want to demo to you. You can have authentication on the server and not have it on the client, and it's still going to work. Let's go ahead with router 3 here, and we'll do NTP authenticate. And you can set this from 1 to 4 zillion, and I like 1. So let's see, MD5 next, and then our password, which is CCNP, because that's what you're going to be. And we'll set up a trusted key. And I got no rhyme for the next command, so we'll have to just go with it. NTP server is the 4th command that you need on your non-server devices, and you still just put the IP address here of the device. And earlier we looked at prefer briefly, where you can prefer one server over others. Here we're going to use key, and of course that key has to match the key you just set the key number, and there you go. I believe you're going to see now. Yep, notice init under reference clock for initial, but we've lost our asterisk next to that address. And if we run show NTP status, then the clock is unsynchronized, stratum 16, no reference clock. So I will go ahead and pause this for a few minutes while that recooks, so to speak, and then I'll show you the command that actually mentions authentication, because one thing about show NTP status and show NTP association, there's a lot of info there, but I don't see anything about a password or authentication or anything. So we'll be right back in a moment with that. And we're back. We've got our synchronization all up. Took just a couple of minutes. And again, clock is synchronized, stratum of 9 under show NTP status. And under show NTP association, we've got the magic asterisk and a stratum of 8 for the router we have an association with, which is the multi-layer switch. Now, well, you see a lot of great info here, but there's nothing about that authentication. And what you need there is a detail command, and it's show NTP association detail. Holy crap, look at all that detail. You got to admit, that's a lot of detail. And frankly, mostly stuff you'll never use. But what you want to look for is authenticated under show NTP association detail. So you've got the IP address there, whether it was configured or not. It could have been learned via broadcast or multicast mode. But you've got authenticated, it's the master for this particular device. It's sane, which is good to know, and also valid. Sane and valid are referring to some time check values. And that's about it for that detail command. Now what I want to do, though, we've seen that when we had the association set between our multi-layer switch and router 3, and we added authentication to the server, then the association, the existing one, was not torn down. What I want to do is make another one now from scratch from another router and not use authentication at all, and we'll see how that goes. And then we'll see another way to tie things down a little further with our NTP security. So right now, having said all that, let's go back to router 1. And first off, we'll ping 10.1.1.4. I just want to make sure it's reachable, and it is. So NTP what? NTP server 10.1.1.4, and that's really it. That's all we're going to do. So that obviously, let me go ahead and run the commands. I don't think it's going to be up that fast. Yeah, I didn't think so. And I'll do a show NTP association here. And what I'll do, I'll end this video. We're at the 7:22 mark. And at the beginning of the very next one, we're going to pick up with this lab at the exact same point once router 1 has synced with that switch with our time server, and then we'll add a little more security to our NTP deployment. We'll do that on the very next vid.